All right, good evening, everyone. We will be starting the next talk, which is titled CTI 101. If I could get the webcam off so I can show as much of the slides as possible. All right, so as people come in here, so up front, I have a couple disclaimers. First disclaimer is, as we go through this presentation of this talk, a lot of these are going to be my own personal opinions about the intelligence field. You, if you are in the intelligence discipline, may not agree with me. Some of us have different paradigms. If you are not in the intelligence field, I'm going to say some stuff that you may not agree with, and that's okay, because we all have different paradigms and mindsets. The goal of intelligence is to have that diversity of thought. So if you want to challenge me at the end of this, you are more than welcome to, but we will do it offline. Please don't do it during the discussion. The other disclaimer during this is that this is actually two talks. So the first portion of this talk is intended for executives and leadership. So this will be your executive summary portion. So again, good evening. This is your CTI 101 talk, where we're going to put the fun in Intel Fundies. The classification for this talk is public. So your bottom line up front, as you are all executives, is three main things I want you to take away. As many intelligence professionals already know, all intelligence should be timely, accurate, and relevant. So when you are receiving intelligence, or you're asking for intelligence from your teams, you want to make sure it is all three of these things. Also important is to make sure that intelligence is clear and concise. If you don't understand it, I haven't given you a good product. So make sure if you produce intelligence or you're receiving intelligence, it should be free of jargon. It should be tailored to the customer, whether that be you, the executive members, or to some of your analysts. And finally, intelligence should be actionable. It should inform decisions. If I tell you a bunch of things like, well, they set up websites, that doesn't really tell you anything. But if I tell you they specifically use this type of hosting service and specifically use this type of certificate, then maybe you can go and do something about that, because now you have some information that can intelligence that can inform what actions you're going to take. All right, for executives, thank you for attending this talk. The overall classification of this presentation has been, gotta go fast. If you're an executive, you are free to go to the back and enjoy the networking and drinks sponsored by Qualys. For everybody else that would like to attend the second presentation tonight, good evening. This is the CTI 101, putting the fun in intelligence fundamentals. The overall classification for this presentation is public. Here's everything we're going to talk tonight as we go through the rest of this slide deck. We're going to talk about a little bit of the intelligence process, talk about the intelligence life cycle, what intelligence analysts are actually doing in the background. I'll give you clear up some myths about intelligence and what CTI is not, and then that'll be the harshest part of this talk. Finally, we'll transition into what CTI is, a lot of what you just heard, but further explained. And then finally, we'll get into some models, frameworks, and techniques that you've probably heard about as one of the ways, or the reason this talk came about is because one of our members asked more about the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so we will cover that and a couple other models, frameworks, and techniques. And finally, I'll give you some further studies to look into, which if you go into the Discord right now, I've actually published all those links for you to start reading. So the Department of Defense has done a great job of modeling how the intelligence process works. This model has been around for a very long time. It's not going to change anytime soon, because it does a great job of describing how all the observations we have in our environment, our organization, our business is gathered and then eventually turned into intelligence. So on your left-hand side, my stage right, you'll see that it says the operational environment in the graphic. Again, that is your business, your organization, wherever you're getting data generated. Could be on somebody's workstation, it could be on somebody's networking device. It's just inside your organization. Well, that's eventually going to get collected by something, and that is now data. But data without any context doesn't really mean anything until you start to look a little bit deeper into it. So it goes through a couple evolutions of transformations and manipulations, turning into information and ultimately intelligence. But that's kind of a boring way to talk about this. So here's the easy way. If you don't want to look like a madman when you're talking to everybody, do not only sit in the area of telling people gee whiz shit and just putting data out there. What you want to be is looking like the smartest man in the room, because you've taken that data and transformed it into something you can do with, something you can take action on. How do you do that, you might wonder? So intelligence professionals have a process, and this is the intelligence lifecycle you see on your left-hand side. The acronym that we commonly use is PCPAD, stands for Planning, Collection, Processing, Analysis, and Dissemination. Well, you might look up there and see around that giant circle, there's another step, evaluation and feedback. So you say, what the F, what is F? So feedback is unique in that it takes place during every single phase of the intelligence process. Whether it's you as the customer coming back to me saying, I would like to see more of this, or I'd like to refine my question, or I, as the intelligence professional, reaching out to a subject matter expert, asking if there's any way we can look into this certain area, whether you be a reverse engineer or a security analyst, you have a specialty in hardware hacking, whatever it may be. It's a feedback loop, and the circle of the intelligence process, much like Sisyphus in the bottom left, goes on, and the next day when we do intelligence, it happens again, and the next day when we do intelligence, it happens again. And ultimately, that's going to output a form of intelligence which normally falls into 3 different types. That is strategic, where all the executives that already left the room, that would have been intended for them. Because a lot of that is the large overview of what is happening in the world, in the threat landscape that is out there. Some of you may have heard the term gray space. That is talking about the larger internet, where your organization connects to and eventually has no control over what happens once it leaves your boundaries. The next type of intelligence is operational. So this is more starting to get closer down to where your SOC analysts are. So as a CitySec or a security community, this is a lot of where the intelligence that you want to know about is coming in. This is going to inform managers, some of your product development teams. So as they hear about campaigns that are happening in the world, like phishing attacks, going after the Ferrari CEO, cloning the voice of a close friend of his, that might be something that those business managers want to know about. And finally, there's tactical/technical intelligence. Technical because some people prefer that, depends on whether you're across the pond or not. And this is directly to your hands-on keyboard operators, the people that are taking actions against cybersecurity threats. It all comes down to identifying your customers. Who is your audience? Different types of intelligence will be generated for different customers because they have different needs. So you have a pretty good idea of what intelligence is, how it's generally conducted, and you might have had some preconceptions about what cyber threat intelligence is. Well, the first thing that I will tell you that what cyber threat intelligence is not, it is not a crystal ball. It will not tell you the future. You will not know every single thing that is going to happen 5 seconds or 5 years into the future. It is an assessment. It is, at best, an estimative guess of what is the most likely thing to happen in the near term, midterm, or long term. CTI is not just following people on Twitter or X, whatever your preference is. If you are just grabbing random things from X and Twitter, that's cool. That's gee whiz stuff. That's information, but that's not intelligence. Some of the other ways you may see this is that somebody just says, hey, I read this article, and they send you the article with absolutely nothing else attached to it. Again, that's not intelligence. That's good information, but it doesn't help you in your job. And finally, CTI, or cyber threat intelligence, is not about just collecting a bunch of indicators. It doesn't matter if you have every single procedure known about APT 45 if you're not doing anything with it. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to play around in your threat intelligence platform or your open repository. You're like, yeah, we saw all this stuff, but we're the only ones that know about it. Doesn't really help anybody. In this part, these are some other things that I have experienced, so that a lot of this is anecdotal, hence why one of the sources is Trust Me Bro. The more tools and feeds we have, the better our CTI program will be. Intelligence is not about how much data you're getting. It's about the quality of data you're getting and how you're using it to inform decisions. Having recorded future, having threat connect, having multiple cybersecurity groups, whether it be on Slack, Discord, Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, the more of those you have doesn't mean you're going to have better intelligence. The more tools you have doesn't mean you're going to have better intelligence. If you cannot apply the right models, frameworks, and techniques to produce intelligence. I can't share these public IPs, they're private. Again, this goes back to the curation of collecting information about threat actors. If you have a public IP or a file hash or whatever indicator, it doesn't do anybody else any good if you're the only one that knows about it. Now, that is not to say that you can't control who it gets disseminated to, because if you remember a few slides back, dissemination is a part of the intelligence process, but you should be sharing intelligence with the right parties at the right time. Do not collect and just keep it to yourselves. And finally, all of our services are being scanned. That means we're going to be attacked. This is actually from a pretty, if you've ever taken the, I'm sorry, I forgot. We're not talking to intelligence professionals, so you wouldn't know this story. So that was a bad assumption on my part. I had some bias and prejudice. So let me eliminate that real quick. So if you've ever seen anything where your services are being scanned, do you immediately hit that big red button in work and go, yep, we need to start incident response. We're being scanned by Shodan. Does anybody do that? Oh, we got one. I got one nod. Hey, one nod person. You ready? Oh, that was not who I intended it for. Would you? That was a little fast. Would you like one as a? Well, you got one already. No more. She's good. Are you okay? I know so much. Yeah, exactly. That's it. My career's down the drain. All right, so we talked about what CTI is not. Let's get back to the good stuff. What CTI is. CTI is the eyes and ears of a proactive defense and risk reduction strategy. You may not have heard this, but I assure you a lot of people in the intelligence field will tell you this. Intelligence is about risk management, especially for likelihood. So if you look at this risk matrix, the key area that intelligence professionals work in is identifying what is the likelihood of something happening based off the threat that they've identified. We may not know the impact. That could be another team, could be your vulnerability management program, your patch management program, you're a security analyst. It could be anybody else that you're working with. But ultimately, you're contributing to identifying risk to your organization, to your team, or to yourself. So that's, if you take nothing else away from this, if you don't remember the three things we talked at the beginning about, take that away. Intelligence is about risk management. So one thing that has been put out through the community, you've probably heard about indicators of compromise. Well, indicators of compromise come about because somebody saw something in the data or the information, and they applied some context with it. So I'm going to try something with the crowd. I want you to say it with me. IOC equals observable plus context. Fantastic. I heard you the loudest. I'm not going to throw it at you again. Don't worry. Hey, we got it. Again, going back to what is intelligence? Intelligence is useful when it is shared with the right people. It doesn't do anybody any good if you can't do anything with it. And who might that be? It really depends. This is just one example of who your stakeholders or your customers may be. It could be people within your company, internally, or it could be externally. I'm not going to read off all those different types of customers, but there's probably way more than that depending on where you work or what you do in just your personal life. So we talked about what it is, what it's not. Okay, well, how do intelligence analysts eventually produce intelligence? So we got a couple of different models and frameworks, techniques. I'm only going to hit a couple because this talk was slated for 20 minutes and I'm already at 15. So I'm only going to hit a couple of them, but this is the main way. You've probably heard of the cyber kill chain. You've definitely heard of MITRE ATT&CK because it's in every single product that has 100% coverage, which means you're never going to be hacked ever. You've probably heard of the diamond model, and you've probably heard of the pyramid of pain. But instead of the pyramid of pain, I want to talk about the pirate ship of pain that Cisco Talos came up with. Cisco Talos is the threat intelligence arm for Cisco. And so they put this together because, one, it looks pretty dope, and two, who doesn't like pirates? So in this, the pirate ship / pyramid of pain was a concept written about and delivered by David Bianco. If you're in the intelligence field or you're in cybersecurity, you've probably heard that name before because he's been responsible for not only the pyramid of pain, but he's also been responsible for the squirrel threat hunting framework. The squirrel fronting framework. He's also been key in helping with the Tahiti framework. And finally, and probably most notably in recent day, he has been the key author behind the Peak fronting framework written by Splunk. And so this same idea of the pyramid of pain still exists through all those fronting models. And it's all about how much pain can you inflict on the adversary, not how much they can inflict on you. So as it says down here at the bottom of the graphic, or bottom of the slide, is there anything here I can use to detect the adversary's activity, and where does that fall on the pirate ship of pain? The amount of pain you can cause an adversary depends on the type of indicator. So for example, you'll see the hash values at the bottom there. Those are very trivial. Another way to think about that is, let's say you're at Casey's. And for some reason, you're a bad guy and you want to steal some bubble gum from inside the little corner mart. You could take that bubble gum. How easy do you think it is for Casey's to replace that or just write it off? Pretty simple. I'm not advocating for doing that, by the way. Please do not commit any crimes based upon this talk. That is just an analogy. So that was one analogy. Okay, what about the opposite end, the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs? The way you can think about this is playbooks used by the Iowa State Cyclones. We got one fan. And the Hawkeyes. Okay, a little bit. Oh, okay, there's more response. So think of it that way. What would happen if one of those teams was able to grab their playbook and completely change it? All their the run game is never going to get established. All that coverage is just going to get decimated if their playbooks have been disrupted. So that's the idea of that pyramid or pirate ship of pain. You can inflict pain or impose cost on the adversary based off of what you can affect and stop. The big, well-known framework / map, the MITRE ATT&CK. At one point, this actually did stand for something. It was the adversary tactics and techniques and common knowledge. These days, it's just attack. But the idea of this is essentially it is a map. You have a bunch of tactics that want to be achieved, such as data exfiltration, credential access, discovery, initial access, command and control. But I'm not going to list off all 14. It's either 14 or 16 now. But each of those objectives have a technique under them in which they can be achieved. That's really all you need to know about attack. If you want to know even more about it, you can go into those techniques or the sub-techniques and see the procedures in how they perform that to accomplish that technique in order to achieve their tactic and claim their goal. But realistically, it's just a map. You are mapping observations to see what adversaries have done in the past. That's one key thing to know about MITRE ATT&CK framework is that it is historical. This only gets updated every 6 months. There's some minor updates in between, but realistically, it's only every 6 months. The next update is coming on the 22nd of April, which is now going to version 17. Version 16 was released in April of last year. So just to give you an idea, this can help you identify where you may have gaps in your defensive countermeasures, whether it be, again, at the organizational level, at the global level, personal level. This can be applied at any level. It is there not only to tell you, here's how bad guys do things. It's also there to tell you, here's how to mitigate or detect it as well. And finally, a technique I would love to leave you with is the analysis of competing hypotheses. This technique has been around since the 1970s, as it was written by a doctor, Richard Hauer, at the Central Intelligence Agency, to work on a way to eliminate bias in analysis from analysts. And the reason for that is because a lot of the information that you see out there, it usually evokes some kind of reaction from you. So we heard recently about, James Beal talked about the $1.5 billion worth of cryptocurrency that was taken by Lazarus Group. A lot of you probably went, wow, that's a lot, that's crazy, and you had an emotional reaction. And so because of that emotional reaction, you're going to respond to that information and have a bias going into looking into it further. This technique is a way to eliminate that bias. Or I should say, reduce bias. Because we're all human, we all have bias, we all engage in fallacies and prejudice. That's a part of who we are. But that's what techniques are there to do. So this technique in particular is a diagnostic technique, and it identifies the most consistent hypothesis. So when you're using this technique, you're identifying, here are things based off of evidence that has been observed, that is factual evidence. I am identifying, here are the likely scenarios to occur in the future. Because you're not looking into the past, that's where your evidence is. You're trying to do predictive analysis and identify where you can take steps next to reduce the amount of risk you're about to take on. So again, I already covered, reduces the likelihood of bias. A couple of the cons about this is that it's very time consuming. It's actually an 8-step process, and you're collecting a lot of information. Generating a hypothesis is not an easy thing to do, and it is especially useful for large-scale issues where there's a lot of different decision makers involved, and you want to make sure that you're presenting the best, the most forensically or scientifically sound analysis or hypothesis to those decision makers. So, we talked about a lot of different things tonight, but intelligence goes way more than that. You'll hear of some people in the intelligence field that intelligence is thinking about thinking. And that's absolutely right. It's constantly studying, constantly reading, constantly watching videos, going to lectures, doing training. A lot of how all of us in the cybersecurity community, information technology community, or information security community, we're constantly learning things to keep ourselves current in our fields, but also relevant in our fields. So I posted this in the Discord already. These are a lot of just some minimum things that a Intel analyst in cyberspace would want to know about. You don't have to memorize all these because some of these are about 100 pages, if not more. Nobody here can actually name all 7 axioms of the diamond model. Nobody I've met, at least, in my professional career in intelligence. But they know how to employ it, and that's the most important thing. So, with that, thank you for attending tonight. The overall classification for this presentation is for everyone. I will now take any questions. You can clap too if you want. I promise I won't throw these as hard next time. All right, looks like I answered your request for information. Jared, did you have any questions since this was prompted by you, essentially? All right, then I've done my job. Oh, never mind, there is one question. The question was, can I have a Snickers? Yes, you can. Does that answer your question? Yeah, we're good. Okay, we're good. All right, again, that has been the talk. Please enjoy the rest of the evening.